Hello everyone, here is a brief recap of the movie Overboard. Enjoy watching. Dean is a skilled carpenter who was hired to work on a massive yacht. His task is to rebuild the wardrobe of the extremely unpleasant and rude wealthy woman Joanna, whose mere presence makes the entire crew suffer. With every word and action, she makes it clear how much she despises the worker. Joanna flaunts herself in very revealing swimsuits, which is how Dean notices a birthmark on her buttock. Her husband, Grant, spends his time doing pointless activities like shooting clay pigeons with a rifle or firing suction cup arrows from a bow. After 48 hours, which tested Dean's patience to the limit, the miraculous wardrobe mechanism was ready. However, the lady was still dissatisfied. She insisted the shelves had to be made of cedar, but this Neanderthal had dared to craft them from oak, though the material had never even been discussed. After an argument, the woman refuses to pay for the work and kicks the carpenter off the yacht. Finally, Dean tells her everything he had bottled up over those 2 days, much to the delight of the yacht's crew. But the vile woman pushes Dean overboard and orders the captain to move full speed ahead. Not only does the carpenter lose his $600 for the work he completed, but he also loses all his tools. Dean complains about his misfortune to his friend Billy, while Joanna complains about the carpenter to her mother, who lives in some extravagant and over-the-top mansion. Dean is a single father raising 4 mischievous kids who almost set fire to their school principal when she came to congratulate them on their first day at their new school. The family had recently moved. One night, the drunken diva remembered that she had left her wedding ring on the deck and went to retrieve it, wearing high heels. She lost her balance and fell overboard. Her husband heard her cries for help, but simply turned up the volume on the TV. The next day, the local news reported that a passing garbage barge had rescued an unidentified woman from the water who was suffering from amnesia. The wealthy man saw his wife's interview. She may have lost her memory, but she was still just as mean. During the hospital identification process, Joanna caused a massive scene, and her husband decided he'd be better off without her. He told everyone he didn't recognize her. When the carpenter saw the news about Joanna on TV, he was thrilled. He went to the hospital and claimed the woman was his wife, Annie. The only personal item she had with her was her underwear, but the woman refused to believe this rough-looking man was her husband. Dean quickly invented details about their shared past, but Joanna demanded proof. Dean then mentioned the birthmark on her buttock, something no random stranger could possibly know. Both the doctors and the police were eager to get rid of the troublesome patient, so they let Dean take her. Annie was shocked to find herself living in a rundown shack surrounded by rusty junk. The interior wasn't any better. The floor was uneven and creaky, and the place was cluttered with random items and trash. It was time to meet the kids. Dean had already coached the boys, so they immediately called the unfamiliar woman Mom. The kids found her address that would have better suited a chubby short person. Greg and Charlie were twins who didn't look alike. The chubby one was Travis, and the smallest troublemaker was Joey. Annie soon learned that her mother had died of alcoholism, and her father was hoping for early release from prison. After such revelations, Dean sent his wife to the kitchen. Annie had no idea what to do with a chicken or vegetables. Lighting the stove for the first time, the clueless woman immediately burned herself. Luckily, there were fire extinguishers nearby. That evening, Dean planned to drink beer with his friends and play bowling, promising to return whenever he felt like it. He bragged to his friend about how he was reforming the rich woman, spilling cheap booze on himself in the process. Back at home, Dean decided to shock his guest by pretending to be drunk and climbing into bed with her. When Annie refused to share the bed with him, he told her to sleep on the hard couch instead. That night, the dogs got scared of the thunderstorm and gave her a sleepless night. On top of that, the roof leaked, forcing her to sleep with buckets in her hands. Early in the morning, the kids need to be taken to school, and the Wonder Mom does her best to prepare their snacks. Dean also leaves for work. It's time to clean the house, but the lady clearly has zero skills in this area. After everything she's been through during the day, Annie sits motionless for an entire hour, barely blinking. The boys ask their dad to trade her in for a new one. Dean snaps her out of her daze by dunking her into a barrel of water. Later, the woman rummages around the house, searching for photographs and family heirlooms that might help her regain her memory, but everything supposedly got lost during the move. Unexpectedly, for a brief moment, she remembers the wardrobe the carpenter made for her. That night, Dean asks Billy to fake some family photos. He uses pictures of Joanna that were taken when she was rescued by the garbage barge, so she looks grumpy in all of them. The woman resigns herself to the fact that her place is in this hell Billy comes over to Dean's to watch football, and Dean continues to mess with his housekeeper, telling her that the chubby boy was her high school sweetheart. The kids smear glue on plates, which end up stuck to Annie's hands, and the youngest sprays her with ketchup. The woman snaps but realizes she can get back at them, so she sprays the whole group with water from a hose. At school, the boys refuse to take tests meant to assess their intellectual abilities, prompting the principal to call both parents in. The kids pretend to be sick, but Dean doesn't notice the rash covering their bodies and lashes out at the teacher, something he's exceptionally good at. That same evening, it turns out that Joey can't read and is deeply embarrassed about it. Annie scolds Dean for planning to go out while their kids are unwell. When Dean comes home late at night, he surveys the kitchen and realizes how much cleaner the house has become. He wants to apologize to Annie but finds her crying because she's also now covered in a rash. Feeling sorry for her, he carries his pseudo-wife to a comfortable bed. During a family outing in nature, Dean and Billy discuss the idea of building a mini golf course. Annie, to her own surprise, suddenly starts speaking French. She also remembers various world wonders, which become the foundation for the mini golf course project. One evening, Dean heads out to go bowling again, but forgets his ball at home. Annie drives to deliver the ball to him, but he's not at the local bar. It turns out he's unloading sacks of fertilizer every night. Dean and Billy present their mini golf project to investors, convincing them to fund it as a local attraction. Construction begins, but Dean starts feeling guilty for deceiving the woman. Joey is slowly starting to read, and the other kids are no longer running around aimlessly. They're occupied with calmer activities. When Dean gets home, he starts talking about how ashamed he feels because he's hiding something from Annie. She assumes he's referring to his nightly outings. However, Dean wants to tell her the whole truth but hesitates and instead lies, saying it's her birthday. After having a great time at the bar, Annie is thrilled by the taste of $8 champagne, even though not long ago she turned up her nose at black caviar. Dean tells Annie a romantic legend in which everyone died for the sake of love and then kisses her on the lips. That night, they finally have their first marital night together. Meanwhile, Grant is having a wild time with 3 women, but unfortunately, he has to return to town to get his wife because Joanna's mother threatens to send hitmen after him if he doesn't call her daughter. Annie finds her underwear with initials in Dean's truck and throws a tantrum. Dean decides it's a good opportunity to finally tell the truth and admits that the underwear is hers, but she's not his wife. He asks the kids to confirm his words. However, the kids have already gotten used to their new mom and stick to the original story. Even Billy doesn't help, jokingly claiming the underwear is his, so Annie remains unaware of the truth. Finally, the mini golf course is ceremoniously opened in town. During his speech, Dean thanks his wife for her help and confesses his love to her. Near their house, the family is greeted by a limousine, out of which steps Joanna's real husband. When she sees him, her memory finally returns. She's delighted by this and by the fact that she actually has a lot of money. However, she starts to wonder what she was doing in this backwater and why Dean treated her this way. She remembers that Dean is the carpenter who hates her. She's not Annie, not his wife, and not the mother of these boys. The woman goes into the house to collect her belongings but realizes there's nothing there for her. The boys chase after the limousine and their second mom, but Grant shoos them away. Joanna finally returns to her luxurious yacht but has already grown unaccustomed to a life of idleness and prefers beer over champagne. She offers delicacies to her mother, shocking everyone since that's what the servants are for. The wealthy are in for an even bigger shock when Joanna casually opens a beer at home. Back at Dean's place, everything is falling apart, and the boys are determined to bring their mom back, though their father doesn't share their enthusiasm. While Joanna's mom sleeps and her husband reminisces about his wild escapades, she hangs out with the yacht's staff, teaching them how to properly drink tequila. She finds their company much more pleasant and realizes how terribly she used to treat ordinary people. Taking matters into her own hands, Joanna turns the yacht around, but her husband changes course again in the morning. That same morning, Dean decides to catch up to Joanna and bring her back. He and the boys get help from Billy and his friends on a military boat. During the confrontation, Grant accidentally admits that he left her at the hospital and, unable to hold back, also confesses to partying with loose women the entire time. Joanna abruptly stops the yacht and sees the boat with her husband and kids. They almost catch up to her, but the Coast Guard receives a report about poachers, forcing them to turn back. However, Dean isn't deterred and jumps into the water. Joanna follows suit, swimming toward her beloved Carpenter, just like in the romantic legend he once told her. But unlike the legend, this story doesn't end in tragedy. After all, they're wearing life jackets, and there are rescuers nearby in a lifeboat. Joanna admits that she won't even become poorer since the wealth belongs to her, not her husband. The boys immediately start making a list of everything they'd like to get. Thank you for watching until the end. If you enjoyed this video and want to see more stories like this, don't forget to hit the like button, subscribe to the channel, and turn on the notification bell so you won't miss any new uploads.